Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to reintroduce to you now. Nayiri Mississian is a former guest on our show. Be sure to check out her first appearance on episode 437 of Boundless Body Radio. Nayiri Mississian is a certified metabolic health practitioner and an independent nutrition researcher who has no associations with the food industry, pharmaceutical industry, or any politically powered nutrition organizations. Nayiri has been involved in nutrition research since 2015 and shares her scientific information with the followers in her members-only exclusive Facebook groups, which promote the low-carbohydrate, low-insulin lifestyle as supported by scientific evidence. This is the only lifestyle, as shown in medical science, that prevents or even reverses insulin resistance, thus dramatically reducing one's chances of developing metabolic illnesses such as type 2 diabetes, obesity, hypertension, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and even some types of cancer. The low carb and fasting group members have free access to summarized information posts, recipes, tips, and weekly live videos. Nayiri is also the host of the Low Carb and Fasting channel on YouTube, which I was honored to be hosted on. She's also an avid gardener in the summer in London when the weather cooperates, and I'm not sure if it cooperated all that much this year. Nayiri Mississian, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you back to Boundless Body Radio.
It's an absolute pleasure, Casey. Thank you for inviting me. Do you remember how excited I was when I finally saw you in person at the conference
Yes, I'll
in San
never
Diego?
forget.
I was just so excited.
I'll never forget. Yeah, big old hug. Didn't I steal your coffee? Didn't I hug you with
Coffee.
so much? Yeah, sorry about that.
I think it was your coffee. You spilled your coffee.
Well, sorry to me. Yeah, I just remember seeing you and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's there. You gave you a big old hug. And we were just commenting off the air. Like as soon as you logged on to this Zoom call to start this conversation, I see your face and both of our faces just light up. Like it's so good to see you. And like you make these friends in this community. And I asked you kind of like informally, like, do you have as close of friends proportional and other like things that you're interested in that you do in the low carbohydrate space? I'm finding that a lot of the closest friends that I have in my life are in this space together. It's incredible.
It's the same for me. It's the same. I think we have a lot that unites us in this space because we prioritize our health over other things. I mean, that's certainly true of me. I mean, if I have cash to spend, I'll think, what test can I go and get done? Something, it will be something related to, it won't be on the next car or whatever. It'll be on something related to my health, right? We prioritize our health. We generally eat in a similar way, not exactly the same, and we don't have to. We attend the same conferences. Those conferences are just a great opportunity to meet everyone. Uh, you know, I think we really need unity as well because, you hear guest speakers in those conferences. The overall message is pretty similar, but they're not all saying exactly the same things. One speaker might say, hey, coffee is very toxic, don't drink it. The other speaker will have his coffee cup or their coffee cup in their hands as they're speaking. So I think we need to stop, worrying about the nitty-gritty stuff and look or focus more on what unites us.
Love that.
We have a big mission. This is a big mission. We're really going against the mainstream. We're really promoting lifestyle changes. This is big. It's a big movement, and it is supported by science, that's for sure. But we're fighting against big organizations and big, powerful businesses. So we really need to unite more. Who cares if someone's putting a bit of black pepper on their steak or someone's having an avocado with their ground beef? And who cares? Who cares?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I love that. The more united we are, I think the better we can do to fight the fight that we need to fight, like you said. I met you at the 2023 Symposium for Metabolic Health. Unfortunately, you weren't able to make the schlep out to the 2024 Symposium for Metabolic Health. I'm not sure if you attended virtually or not, but it was an incredible conference. And yes, we had two speakers on the stage at different times. One said coffee is a plant, you shouldn't have it, to the consternation of pretty much everybody in the crowd. And somebody else stood up and said, you know what, coffee's probably fine. And basically we just like threw him a parade and hip hip hooray, and we partied around and paraded him around as a hero of the conference because he said he would get coffee. At the end of the day, people make their own decisions. And I certainly want to talk to you about, some of the things that you've done and experimented with over time. And you're right. Like the more that we get tangled up in the weeds of, particular individual things, we're just wasting time and energy that we could be moving this message forward. The reality is it's pretty bad out there. The food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, they're all fighting, the medical industry, everybody's fighting against us being healthy. It's a sick management system. And it's the reality is so far away from what most of us are doing, and we could be a lot more united.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I missed yes, I will watch that one virtually because in 2024, I'd been to the BOCA conference in January. So if I could have a magic wand and I could make one wish, I really would wish to be able to attend every conference, and not just in the US, but also, there's the Switzerland one. They run that every year. The England one, I'm going back to England, back to the UK. I haven't been for a whole year, in fact, over a year. So I'm going back to the UK in December, so looking forward to it. And I will be able to attend the conference there, the PHC conference, in person. So I'm looking to that.
That's great. Yeah, well, okay, so I complain about going to the San Diego conference. I still take a lot of my clients virtually, so I have to wake up super early to take what would be a 6 a.m. client. Here is 5 a.m. California time, so it's really early. That's one time zone difference. For you to travel to San Diego is such a big schlep across the pond in the country, coming from London like you did last time. So you're justified in doing that. And I vaguely remember that you did attend the BOCA conference, which, of course, with any of the SMP, the Symposium for Metabolic Health conferences that Doug puts on, you have a special day on Thursday where they cover a specific topic. And this one in January was all about type 1 diabetes. I wasn't there, but I heard it was absolutely epic. Can you tell us about that?
It was marvelous. It really was. I mean, to meet all the type 1s in this space, not just anyone, but all the type 1 people in this space, that to me, I consider them brothers and sisters. And to also have a conference dedicated to type 1 diabetes, to actually talk of this condition. It was incredible. It was the first time. It was the first time it had been done in this space, certainly. So I was just delighted. They brought in guests from the UK as well. So Ian Lake, Dr. Lake. I don't know if you've had him.
I haven't yet. No.
No, you haven't. You
I need
should.
to reach out.
You should. So it was wonderful to actually hear different voices from different parts of the world, everyone talking about managing type 1 on a low carbohydrate diet.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, what a cool experience. And you and I, again, talking offline, you just listened to the episode that we released recently with Jody Nishida, a pharmacist out of Hawaii doing amazing work. I love her passion for getting this message out as well. And she is the organizer for this next conference. And the first day is going to be all about women's health. And amazing. That's going to be an awesome day.
I'm going to miss it, sadly, but we'll watch it virtually. It's because in December, we're leaving the US. So I'm in California right now. So we're leaving
I didn't realize that.
Back to go to the UK. And to come back in January is just not going to be feasible. I mean, I would do it if I could.
No worries. Well, we mentioned in the introduction that from everything I've heard in the United Kingdom this summer, it has been a really cold, wet kind of a summertime. I don't think it was a great growing season, but being in California, did you have a blast gardening?
So we were in Toronto and only just arrived to California. So we're in Huntington Beach. So I'm really loving the sun and the beach. I desperately need the sunshine. So I've got a bit of color on me now, which is great. So I'm making the most of it before, before
Huntington.
I leave.
Huntington's amazing. It's one of those places that you go to and you realize, oh, this is why it's so expensive because it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's a lovely place.
It actually is, and there's always something going on down on the beach. I mean, it's the surfing capital, right? I mean, this year we missed it, but 2 years ago we were here as well. We stayed much longer, and it was the surfing championships were happening, and we just watched it live from the beach or
Uh,
from the pier. It was like incredible. It was the first time I was seeing
mm,
surfing, so I met the British team as well. It was a wonderful experience. So
yeah,
yeah, I'm
that's
making
amazing.
most of the sun while I'm here before we head back to the UK in December. It's not going to be great,
Oof,
but do you know what? It's home.
yeah.
I mean, we travel so much and we'll make home of wherever we're staying, even this Airbnb where I'm recording from, we make it like feel like home. But there's something special in my heart, for the UK because it's where my home is, right? So
Yep.
I'm really looking forward to it. Not the weather's, but I'm looking forward to everything else that's familiar to me, right? Being able to go to the grocery store, you know exactly what aisle you're going to, you know what you can get, you know what you can't get. It's just all these, how to get insulin, how to do this and that.
So we've talked a lot about type 1 diabetes on the show, and recently even we talked to Ryan Attar and Andrew Koenig, and Jess Apple. I'm talking with RD Dykman later on this week. It's really fascinating to get to know this disease and what happens and how it's been presented a little bit more as almost like a window into metabolism for the rest of us as well. Like you understand metabolism through type 1 diabetes quite a bit better if you understand it. So I've asked this question a lot, but I really loved and appreciated all the different varied answers we get from this. Let's talk about this specific situation. And for somebody that's never heard of type 1 diabetes, so what? You don't get your insulin. You can't put insulin in your pump. Like what could possibly happen? Can you explain how that situation could have been extremely critical for you and the mechanisms of why that is?
It's actually life and death situation. And, I'm always smiling. I always keep a smile on my face, even in tricky situations. And I kept communicating with everyone at the hospital, at the emergency clinic, with a smile on my face. And all along, I'm looking at my husband sitting in the corner, and he's like going, "Why are you even smiling?" It's like, this is life and death. This is serious, man. I told him to just turn his back. I said, "You're just now irritating me." That's probably the first time I got irritated by my husband ever in all these years. Um, okay, so it is a life and death situation. He was right. So if I couldn't get my insulin and I'd run out of insulin, I would probably fall into what the general public will know as diabetic coma, because my blood sugars would have risen so high. And without insulin, I would have gone into DKA, which is diabetic ketoacidosis. And God, I don't know, because it's fatal. So DKA is fatal. Not everyone dies of it. If you go to a hospital and you get proper treatment, you could be saved, but many people, including teenagers, actually. So if you're in type 1 groups on Facebook, every now and again, you just see someone posting their teenager's face saying, he or she died of DKA, and how could we have prevented it? So yeah. Insulin is needed if you are type 1 diabetic because your pancreas doesn't make any. And in case people are wondering, no, you cannot control it with diet. You need insulin. You can actually manage your blood sugars better with the right diet, but you still need insulin. If you have zero insulin production or insufficient insulin production, you are going to need insulin for the rest of your life. There's no cure for it at the moment. There are some positive sort of news here and there, but those positive news of magic cure were around when I was a child 45 years ago. When I was diagnosed at age 5 in 1978. So yeah, my mother was told it won't be long. There's a cure coming, and we kept hearing that over the decades. So if your child is newly diagnosed now, you're a parent, I would say learn how to manage blood sugars better through diet, through using insulin smartly, because that's key. Regardless of your diet, you are going to need insulin. You're going to need insulin for protein. And many people are surprised about that. You're going to need insulin for carbohydrates, which most diabetics know about anyway, but people don't know. You are going to need insulin for the protein. You're actually going to need insulin for the fat content in your meal. Every nutrient is going to need different dosage, different timing of insulin, perhaps even different types of insulin, but you are going to need insulin to cover all your meals. And if you're not eating, you're still going to need insulin. If you're fasting, you're still going to need insulin to maintain your normal bodily functions, because insulin is an absolutely essential hormone. We'd be dead without it. So
Wow. Okay. Well, you mentioned diabetic, or I'm sorry, DKA,
DKA,
diabetic ketoacidosis. Yeah, yeah.
ketoacidosis, yeah.
You mentioned diabetic ketoacidosis, and you know what? It's interesting because you're talking about blood sugar management, and I've heard that keto term before, and that seemed like that was a really good way to manage blood sugar, but you're explaining it as something dangerous. So maybe we shouldn't be giving ketogenic diets to people with type 1 diabetes. What do you think?
Okay, so ketogenic diet does not result in ketoacidosis, which is a completely different condition. I actually have a short video on my channel. If anyone visits my channel, just put in diabetic ketoacidosis versus nutritional ketosis, and you'll see a couple of clips, one from Dr. Ian Lake, who explained it beautifully. So if you're running your body on fat and ketones, like fatty acids and ketones, you are in a state of ketosis. So you are in nutritional ketosis. So instead of burning glucose for energy, you are primarily, I'm not saying you're never burning glucose, because you still are, but you are primarily using up fatty acids for your fuel, and ketones, of course. So that's a state of nutritional ketosis, which is completely different from the fatal condition of diabetic ketoacidosis, which usually is the result of high blood sugars. Well, keto diet does not put you in high blood sugars, right? Let's face it. And also insufficient insulin. And the keto diet never promotes no insulin or take as little as possible. You need insulin. You need a good baseline of insulin, regardless of whatever your diet is. So to be in a diabetic ketoacidosis state, you need to, most people will have high blood sugars and insufficient insulin or no insulin on board. There is a condition, though. There is something called euglycemic ketoacidosis, so where people have experienced DKA with normal blood sugars, but that's extremely rare, and it only seems to happen in rare situations with people who are on certain medications. For most people, you need to have to be very low in insulin, high in blood sugars, to have a potential risk of DKA.
Got it. Well, thank you for explaining.
I would have definitely fallen into DKA if I did not have insulin. So it may have taken me 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, but I would have fallen into DKA without insulin. My blood sugars would have been high. and that's your DKA. Well, keto diet does not cause DKA because the keto diet still promotes insulin use. I mean, no one on a keto diet says, don't take your insulin. You still need your insulin, and your blood sugars are probably, or they're more likely to be in normal range on a ketogenic diet, or even low carbohydrate or lower carbohydrate diet. And that's not ketoacidosis. That's a state of nutritional ketosis. So I
Thank
just
you
want
for
to clarify that.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I wish more medical professionals in particular knew about that, because I think there is still a lot of unwarranted kind of fear around that. And all of this that you're talking about, I know you've got it down and you're managing it quite well, and you can, have these stressful situations and not get too freaked out. It's the way I have to do like house repairs around here. I always have to make sure my wife is off like hiking or doing something different so I can just get to work. And if something goes wrong, she doesn't have to know about it or see it or whatever. That's kind of how we are as spouses. But it can be very complicating for people, and it's more recently that I've been introduced to this concept of like this it's really a thing for diabetics, where there's this added level of stress and feeling like you're failing all the time in this management. It's so challenging. You introduced me to Allison Smith, or Smart, excuse me, Allison Smart. And, she is talking about how a main kind of insulin is set to disappear from the market. And initially I would think like, okay, well, just take another one. There must be others and different ones. And like, no, there's actually not. And like this particular type, and like, again, trying to manage all this stuff is so complicated. Can you talk a little about the specific kind of condition? I can't remember the exact term, but it's like stress around diabetes in particular, both type 1 and type 2.
I think, it's called diabetic distress or anxiety around diabetes. It is common among diabetics, especially those who want to take better care of themselves, right? So if you're not really measuring your blood sugar consistently, you're not wearing a CGM, or even if you are wearing a CGM, you've set your target at, I don't know, 200, or your normal range between 200 to 250, you're probably not that bothered about doing a better job improving your outcomes, and it may actually have less of an impact on you mentally. However, of course, physically, you are going to have consequences eventually. But people who want to do a good job, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating, especially type 1, because I cannot even begin to explain to someone the number of calculations that go on in my head at how much insulin I need at any given moment in time, right? So, for example, if my blood sugar is 90, right? And that's normal. My blood sugar is 90. The CGM is showing 90, and that's good. The CGMs display, I'm sure you're familiar with it, Casey, but the CGMs display the number at that moment in time with an arrow next to it, which is basically prediction, intelligent prediction by the software to show you, predicting which way your blood sugar is going, right? So if I'm 90 and I'm going straight, the arrow's going straight, I don't need to take any further action. I don't need to do anything. If that arrow's pointing downwards, and it can go both ways downwards, it can just be slanted or it can be crashing downwards. Let's suppose it's slanted and going downwards. Before it hits 70, 60, 50, I need to make a decision if I need to do something or not about it, right? At that point, because my blood sugar is dropping. Anywhere between 80 to 90, 80 to, for me personally, 80 to 100, I'm happy with it. I like staying there because, I feel my best when I'm within that range. If I'm dropping at 90, I need to make a decision. So first, I have to look at my pump and see how much insulin I still have on board. Now, if you are not using a pump, you're not going to get that data, that information. So you need to sit back and get a piece of paper and remember, okay, how much insulin did I inject? And at what time I injected? Was it 3 hours ago? Was it 4 hours ago? It's calculation after calculation, right? Because the fast-acting insulin that you would have taken 3 hours before can still hang around in your system for up to 4 hours, right? So my pump displays that information for me, which I'm grateful for. So I'm 90, I'm dropping. I look at how much insulin I still have on board, because if I still have some rapid-acting insulin on board, that's going to be a faster drop, right? I need to do something about it. Then I think about, okay, so do I eat? When did I eat last? Do I still have food on board? That's probably going to start kicking in at some point. So all of these are calculations. You just constantly calculating, and no two situations are exactly the same, because, you know, people have busy lives. We eat different foods. We eat at different times. We have different levels of activities from day to day, and we have different types of activity from day to day. It's calculation after calculation. Like, all of that goes on in my head sometimes when people are talking to me, and I'm like so engrossed in my own calculations. It's like, I said, sorry, I didn't hear anything. Like, my husband's victim of that. So I really feel so. He knows. He says, you didn't hear me. I said, no, because I was just too busy trying to just figure out what to do, because you see, with type 1 diabetes, you don't want to find yourself in a tricky situation. You don't want your blood sugar to hit 400 before you decide, oh, that's a bit high, so I need to do something about it then, right? So it's too late. You really should be following that arrow and making your calculations and thinking about taking action as you see your blood sugar rising above 140 or above 160. The same for a drop. You don't wait until you've hit like 40 and then deciding, oh, I need to eat sugar now. So no, it's too late, because it can actually take, whether you're that high or that low, it can take hours. Even when you take action to treat, it can take hours before you see your blood sugar back to normal again. So it's not an easy life, and it's understandable. This is just one example, right? So it's understandable why there is frustration and distress around diabetes. Now, can we do anything about it? If you actually I actually interviewed Dr. Keith Runyon. He's written a book on mastering type 1 diabetes. He's a nephrologist. He's type 1 diabetic himself. He says the best that he does for himself is to keep most of the variables that have an impact on your blood sugar as constant as possible from day to day. So he eats similar meals, pretty like real similar meals, similar portions at the same time every single day. So because meal obviously will have an impact on your blood sugar. He does weightlifting. He does exactly the same duration of exercise, exactly the same strength at the same time every single day. So by keeping those, variables as constant as possible, he says he has better management, because he knows, I mean, it becomes more predictable. He knows what to do. So
Right.
Can everyone live like that? My life is full of like havoc. We're traveling so much. I don't have a routine. Well, I try to, but it's difficult when you're doing too much traveling and you're not in the same place every single day. You don't have access to the same foods every single day. So that can add stress, because you have to do a lot more thinking, and frustration if things don't go the way you want them to go. So I don't know what to say. I mean, my advice to some of my clients is actually what maybe some others wouldn't approve of, but I was telling Dr. Tron, Dr. Brian Lenskis in an interview, I told them, with some of my clients, We completely got rid of the stress or the diabetes distress by increasing. I recommended a higher sort of target range for them. And then they suddenly got back to me. This is doable. I can
Yeah,
do this.
I like
I'm
that.
not constantly fighting to keep my blood sugar at 80. Like, because trying to get to 80 is not very easy unless you're using certain types of insulin. Not everyone around the world has access to these types of insulin, which Dr. Bernstein recommends. Actually, all the Bernstein followers use what we call regular insulin, which is kind of intermediate insulin, intermediate acting. Many of my clients don't have access to that. So they have to make do with what they have, right?
Yeah.
So by just increasing, I remember someone was like trying to target 80, 80, 80. I said, how about targeting 95? Suddenly his life completely changed. You know, it was interesting. Did you, I think you interviewed Suzanne Alexander.
Yeah, she's great.
She's great. Did you actually see her videos doing the blood glucose test on the Maasai tribes? So I watched that live because I was just so fascinated. She spent time with the tribes, right? So I think some of the tribes, not all of them agreed, wanted to be, poked and everything, but some of them allowed her to actually poke them, and she was checking their glucose levels. They were actually, I would say, most of them were between 86 and the upper 90s.
Hmm.
So, we can sit back here and tell everyone to just have a run on 75, at 75 all day long. Maybe there's a lesson there to be learned, right?
Yeah. Interesting.
Another lesson actually to learn is, like, we talk about the masa, what they're eating, like as if, we've lived with them and we know exactly. Oh no, they see fruit on the tree. They're not touching it because it's carbohydrate. They're eating fruit seasonally. Yes, they eat meat. They're drinking tons and tons of milk, which I didn't know about. I had no idea that they were drinking gallons of milk, like 3 liters. 3 liters. I work in liters and metric measure. 3 liters of milk. That's a lot of fresh raw milk. Obviously, that's a lot of sugar. That's a lot of sugar. Milk is full of sugar because milk contains actually protein, fat, and sugar.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah. So yeah, 4 years ago, I used to tell my clients, eat like the Maasai. Like, they're eating honey too. If they
Right.
can find it, they're eating it. So
Yep.
maybe, I'm not saying everyone should do that. I couldn't do that. I couldn't even touch the honey and milk as a type 1 diabetic. It's just, I'm type 1, right? So if you're metabolically challenged, if you're totally broken, then you need to be, more strict than even the Maasai.
Yep.
But I've since stopped actually telling my clients, hey, do what the Maasai do. They don't eat this. They just eat meat all day long, and they drink blood. And it's like, they're very healthy. Well, I saw the live videos from there, and I'm like, no, stop the bias and just be more realistic.
Yeah.
I actually learned a lot from her expeditions. So I'm looking forward to the next one. So hey, Suzanne, if she's watching this, I'm gonna tell her I gave her a shout out too. So
Me too. She's so lovely. Yeah, we've talked about having her on next time after her next exhibition. And somebody who is so excited to go around the world and go exploring and report back is just wonderful. Her stories are amazing. This whole time, you're explaining managing the conditions and how stressful it can be and all the calculations. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm talking to a person who's a metabolic health practitioner who has almost a decade of experience doing this with a low carbohydrate diet with targets around 90, 80 to 90, and can manage that fairly well and understands her patterns so well. And I just think, like, if it's that crazy difficult for somebody like you, think about what it must be like to be given the standard ADA advice, it must be an absolute nightmare to try to manage this stuff. And you hear about the swings and the ups and downs and the hypos and the, like you said, blood sugars at 400. Like, oh my goodness, this is so crazy. And so I know you have so much experience coaching people, and it must be utterly frustrating and also exciting, but utterly frustrating to know it's so individual. It's not going to be the same for anybody. Even in you and your own life, your diet has changed and evolved drastically. It's so hard to be able to like coach people and say like, look, I can give you some ideas, but I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be like on Thursday. I have no idea what it's going to be next week on Tuesday after you went for a 30-minute run. Like, it's just, there's so many variables. Coaching in this world must be just utterly challenging.
It's utterly challenging. And, it's you can relate to people when they get frustrated because they go, but yesterday for this, even when they keep the meal the same, right? Yesterday for this same meal, I only needed 2 units of insulin. So today, 2 units isn't keeping me stable. What's happening? Your digestion rate changes from day to day. That's for sure. So because your digestion rate changes, your insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance, if you like, the temporary insulin resistance also changes. On some days, you might need more insulin. On some days, you might need less. So right now in the morning, I've pumped myself. I haven't eaten yet, right? We're recording this it's 12 p.m. now, noon. I haven't eaten anything. And I've still taken insulin just to cover that, morning blood sugar rise. That's that stress. I was getting stressed, getting ready, and I want to talk to, and the adrenaline rush as well. It's not necessarily like bad stress, but you're excited, and all of that. My blood sugar was high, and I thought, okay, I need insulin, and now I'm watching myself. I'm completely stable and normal, and it's fine. So I needed that insulin, obviously. So if we recorded this in the afternoon, for example, I would have walked to the beach. It's like a 15-minute walk, maybe spent some time sunbathing. That makes me more insulin sensitive. And then walking back to come to you, then I probably wouldn't need that insulin getting ready for my interview. So no 2 days are alike. You have to learn to manage your blood sugars with insulin on an hourly basis. And I'm not saying every hour you need a shot of insulin necessarily, but on an hourly basis, you need to make decisions whether you need to do something about it or not, whether you're dropping fast, and if it's a crash, don't wait until you hit 40 or 30. Treat it. If you're crashing, treat it even when you're still in normal range. So all of these decisions need to be made on an hourly basis. This is how you look at the prime examples in the type 1 community, like R.D. Dykman's son, and Alison Hershey, for example, and anyone else who has non-diabetic A1Cs. They are constantly treating and correcting the high with a tiny bit of insulin, correcting the low with a tiny bit of glucose, and that's how it's going all day long. No one's just sitting back and expecting, to see normal blood sugars. You have to work at it. But you understand why people get frustrated, right?
Yeah.
If you have a busy job, I really don't know how you can meticulously manage it. And this is why I have compassion for people who come to me and say, I can't do this. Like, can't do this.
Yeah.
So,
Wow, it is certainly a challenge. And like I alluded to earlier, again, even in your own life, like a meal yesterday to today kind of changed. And understanding also on a more macro level, like grew up as a mostly kind of vegetarian and adopted vegetarian lifestyle. Eventually you moved into carnivore, and you've learned something really interesting about yourself that I'd love for you to comment on, that actually bringing in more plants was super helpful for you. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience as far as that goes?
Okay, so yeah, I didn't grow up as a vegetarian. It would have like
Okay.
my family. I grew up on the Mediterranean, right? And it was like it hadn't even been heard of. It's impossible. Mediterranean diet, people think, oh, everyone's eating pasta and bread all day long. No, it's very actually meat heavy diet, the Mediterranean diet. Zoe Harcombe talks about it quite often. I didn't grow up as a vegetarian. My family all ate meat, and I grew up on a meat heavy diet when I was a child because my my sort of doctor had told mom, don't give her carbohydrates and certainly limit the rice, but don't give her sugars, no cakes, no desserts, no donuts, and give her limited portions of bread, rice, etc. So this is how I kind of it wasn't a very super low carbohydrate diet, but it was a good diet given the times. It was a lowish kind of carbohydrate diet. That's how I grew up. And then at 19, just as I think I was first year of college, I hadn't heard it. I hadn't been influenced by anyone. This was pre-internet. I hadn't even read a single book on vegetarian diet. I just decided I'm not going to eat meat anymore. So I became vegetarian. And so for about 30 years, I was vegetarian, and until my health started suffering, and I started introducing meat initially, like slowly, and then when I was comfortable with meat, I became pure carnivore. I appeared in a few podcasts, actually, including Dr. Sean Baker's podcast, and I claimed my life had changed. My life changed on a meat only diet until I realized I wasn't that well. So initially, maybe, who knows, maybe I'm just assuming, maybe it was the placebo effect. Because we hear so much about the carnivore diet, and because I genuinely wanted to believe this was going to fix my health problems, fatigue, constant fatigue, lack of focus, brain fog, all of those. And I was already on a low carbohydrate, even ketogenic diet, vegetarian diet, wasn't helping. So I thought, this is it. I need to go carnivore to fix all of these. Initially, at least I felt that my life had changed. Like I was so much better. Until months later, I realized it's actually a big realization because to have changed your diet so drastically and to come to terms with the fact that I'm not better. I'm not actually feeling better. So all of that effort I put into trying to bite into steak, and it's tough for people, who are not familiar with it, right? If you're transitioning into meat eating, that's a difficult thing. I realized I'm not better. I still have brain fog. I can't focus. I can't make two coherent sentences, especially in the mornings. I'm so tired and there's no fix for it. Like I was taking supplements, hundreds of supplements, and just eating meat. And then I realized it's perimenopause. And I hadn't thought of that. So started researching perimenopause, started interviewing actually to learn from them and reading books, interviewing doctors who specialized in perimenopause or menopause hormones. So it was perimenopause, but I hadn't even occurred to me. What was I thinking? I don't know, I was 50, right? And I hadn't even been thinking about that because generally, I eat a very good diet. I'm active. I work out. I hadn't even been thinking about perimenopause. It wasn't even in my mind, and I didn't realize the symptoms could be so debilitating for people, even for people who are on a very clean, good diet, which I was on because I cut out all the vegetables. I was just eating meat, particularly red meat with the fat. Because if you listen to podcasts, right, people say this is what you need and all your hormones will be fixed. So I was doing that. Nothing was fixed. I was still feeling horrible. I remember a couple of interviews I was doing. I like had to stop and re-record. I just thought, I can't think. I've just lost like track of thought. It's embarrassing. It really was life-changing experience for me. I suffered badly. And I have, I just want people to stop saying, hey, go carnivore, high-fat carnivore, you need a fat, everything will be fixed. It didn't fix it for me. I'm sorry, I'm a health coach. And I was actually telling people to do that too. Right?
Well, hey, it works brilliantly for some people.
It does. It does. And you hear testimonies and you go, yeah, she did it. It worked for her. So, and then I realized I need to see a doctor who's specialized in, hormones. And I reintroduced vegetables. I still have digestive problems. So I can't do raw salads, certainly not in large quantities, but cooked vegetables are perfectly fine. And I seem to be doing better. But it's hard to tell if it is because I've introduced some vegetables or is it because of the medications. They're actually like hormone replacements, progesterone he put me on, for example. Hard to tell unless I do kind of a clinical sort of test and let's remove the supplements and just focus on vegetables and diet. But I'm doing both. So who knows what it is that's finally helping me. I'm ready to record again. So if anyone is interested, contact me. I'm coherent now. I can actually think better. I don't have the brain fog, but he put me on progesterone. And this is just the bioidentical hormone replacement, on adrenal support medication, a few vitamins that he thought would help, thyroid support medications, not medication, but supplements. So I'm finally recovering from the debilitating perimenopause symptoms, which I never thought I would experience because I'm healthy, right? If I look at my mom, my aunties, my grandmother, I ask all of them, how bad was it for you? Like my mom didn't even have any symptoms. She didn't even realize. She had none. No one was on a low carbohydrate diet. None of them was doing the carnivore diet. And for me, who's just so health conscious and I literally just eat clean, fresh foods. It's shocking. It's shocking that I actually had the worst symptoms in my entire extended family, including cousins and everyone. No one is even on a low carbohydrate diet. None of them. So that's my experience. And we need to talk about these things. So we need to stop, telling everyone, no, you don't need to do that. You don't need that. Just eat carnivore, high-fat carnivore, and you are going to be fixed.
Yep. I really appreciate that. It's such a temptation because, like I said, it works brilliantly for a lot of people. I've dabbled in things here and there on my carnivore diet for the last 5.5 years. I certainly haven't pushed into vegetables, and I don't miss them. Like I can have steak and eggs, and that's pretty much good for me, and that's fine. But that doesn't mean that I have to go out there and tell everybody they need to do the same thing that I'm doing. The biggest thing I'm taking away from this conversation is that the N equals 1 is the most important thing. Like nobody nobody even has the ability to give you the answers. They just don't. Coaches have a lot of value. What you and I provide for people is great. It's a lot of like making suggestions and you could try this. Neither one of us is telling people what they have to do. We're just, if nothing else, sometimes it's just people talking things out to themselves and listening to themselves and needing that just validation. But at the end of the day, the thing that matters the most is your own experience through life, and to be pragmatic and to test things and to know that things that work this week might not work next week is really, really important. And I think you're an awesome example of that. And again, I understand how frustrating it must be for the coaching side of things, especially with type 1 diabetics and how challenging that can be. But also, I think a lot of people out there that are dealing with this would be very lucky to have you as a coach because of your focus on the N=1 and making sure that you're helping the person decide what is best in their life and nothing is off the table, literally speaking, you know?
Yeah, I think, it really is difficult to stop the bias. Because when we find what works for us, right, we're just so tempted to just share it with everyone. This is what I do. It works wonders for me. So it should work for you too. And we blame people when it doesn't work for them. So I'm just so conscious of respecting that everyone is different. It sounds like cliche. I've always hated to say, oh, we're all different. Everyone says it all the time, like out of context. But my goodness, we really are all different. And that's completely true, right? I coach, like I'm coaching. I work with type 1 diabetics as well as other people, but type 1s also come to me, right? One type 1 diabetic, right, went on a pure carnivore diet, PKD style. I don't know if you know, it originated from Hungary, Dr. Sophia Clemens. So
Yeah.
it just high fat, red meat, carnivore diet. And her blood sugars are immaculate, like completely immaculate. And another type 1 diabetic has high blood sugars on a pure carnivore diet. And she decided, because I spoke to her a couple of days ago, and she said, my blood sugars are finally normal now. And I'm too embarrassed to tell you how I did it. And she said, I'm not eating meat every single day. I'm having eggs. I'm having lots of dairy. I'm having fish, and they have a different impact on blood sugars, and red meat every now and again. So of course we talked about the importance of red meat for women, for brain health, for bones, right? Osteoporosis, because she's a little younger than me, so she's also getting close to perimenopause. We talked about all of that, but at the end of the day, the decision is hers. She says once a week, twice a week of red meat is perfectly fine. I can cope with that. The rest of the time, I'm just eating tons of eggs and fish.
Great.
She lives in a coastal town, so she has
Yeah.
access
Great.
to fresh fish, really fresh, and it's working better for her. So
Excellent.
yeah, so I think we really are different, and we should stop the dogmatism and
Agreed.
the bias. We have a lot of bias. I do too,
Yeah.
or I did. I think over the past year, I've certainly changed. I used to get irritated by people saying something slightly different from what I firmly wanted to believe in. I'm not listening to this doctor. I'm not listening to that. But for example, Ian Lake gave statistics from type 1 population from the UK, and 10%, and this is like, it's shocking. It is shocking. 10% of the type 1 population in the UK have normal A1Cs. We're just measuring the A1Cs. But so normal A1Cs on a high carbohydrate diet. So 10% of them seem to be doing a fine job, at least if A1C is a good marker on its own, which I
Sure.
don't believe in, but that's what the statistics, the numbers were based on, and they're achieving 5.2, average
Fascinating.
5.2% on a high carb diet, whether it was 10% or 5%, I can't remember, but these people are there. So,
Yep.
so I've actually become less biased. even when it comes to fasting, because I've learned that fasting, especially for a food addict, fasting is not necessarily a good strategy. So I even tell in my fasting group, I tell some ladies, don't fast. It's not for you. So with a low carbohydrate, though, I still believe it is a very good principle. I think as a global population, we really could benefit from lowering our carbohydrates, certainly getting rid of all the junk foods and, taking better care of our blood sugar fluctuations. Yeah, I stand firmly with sort of my service of low carbohydrate diet, but also, fasting doesn't have to be like extended fasts.
Right.
I still support the idea of not eating frequently, not eating 9 meals or 6 snacks a day. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna have 3 meals. You have several hours of fasting still. So this is why, I mean, I'm really pleased I came up with the idea of low carb and fasting for my business, because I can forever defend those two and I can individualize them. So it's not carnivore, it's not even keto. I didn't want to use those words. I actually thought very hard, what am I going to call my my business or my coaching kind of thing? And it's based on my book. I was writing a book at the time, so I wanted to call my book Low Carb and Fasting. And then I gave up on that idea. I started coaching and I defend both of those. But again, they need to be individualized for different people.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. That's why, I mean, even when I think of what is carnivore, I like the term hyper carnivore in nature, where it's 75% or more of the calories, because then it widens the basket and you don't need to worry about if little things are creeping up anyway. Yeah, when we get caught up in the semantics, I don't think anybody benefits. So I really loved your approach. I'm glad you'll continue defending low carbohydrate and fasting. I don't think anybody's going to come and take your card away. And you're doing so much amazing work. And I love to see that you got certified with as a metabolic health practitioner this last year. I know how much work that is, and it's great that you are feeling much better. We were able to catch up today and have a wonderful conversation. I think people are going to get a lot from this. So where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
I think my website is the best place. It's www.lowcarbandfasting, all one word.com. So my website will give you direct link to all my social media platforms. And do visit my YouTube channel too. I will invite Casey back. It'll be a pleasure to have you
Ah,
on the channel.
you're such a great host. I love your content there. I love how well you guys have presented the videos, even down to things like branding. It looks really good. It's very clean. And as I'm learning, the more I do this, that's really important for YouTube. I just put basically these raw videos out and I don't do that much editing, and like it's okay and people get the information, but there is value in like making it look really, really good. And yours is very clean. So I'd recommend anybody go to your low carb and fasting YouTube channel. You do a great job there. But for now, Nayiri, it's always such a great thing to be able to catch up with you. Like I said, just dialing this up and seeing you in the first 3 seconds of a Zoom call and both of our faces light up. And yeah, it's just great to catch up. Enjoy California and the sunshine while you can. I hope the move over to London goes well. But for now, thank you so very much for everything you do. And thank you for taking time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you.
Such an honor. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.